Hi, I'm Alan Bizzuti. You're listening to The Other Side of the Bell.
Hello, and welcome to The Other Side of the Bell, a podcast dedicated to everything trumpet, brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass. We'll help you take your trumpet playing to the next level. I'm John Snell, trumpet specialist here at Bob Reeves Brass, and I'll be your host for this episode. Joining me today is trumpeter and founder of the International Women's Brass Conference, Susan Slaughter. We'll get to Susan's interview here in a moment after a word from our sponsor, Bob Reeves Brass, and some trumpet news. Today's episode is brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass, who share your passion for creating extraordinary music. You know that feeling when your instrument just clicks and the music flows effortlessly? That's what Bob Reeves Brass has been helping customers do since 1968. We've helped brass musicians like you achieve their dreams by ensuring their equipment is always in perfect harmony. We know you want to immerse yourself in the art of music making, and we're here to remove any barriers between you and your creative vision. Bob Reeves Brass is truly your one-stop shop for everything you need to fuel your passion and create music that touches hearts and souls. So go ahead, let us help you elevate your sound to new heights. Don't wait another moment to elevate your musical journey with Bob Reeves Brass. Connect with us at bobreeves.com, shoot us an email at info@bobreeves.com, and keep up with the latest news on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Bob Reeves Brass. Embrace your passion for music and let Bob Reeves Brass be your partner in creating the extraordinary. Well, this has been an exciting year. I can't believe we're almost to May by the time this podcast posts. And what a year we've had for this podcast. We've gotten back to regularly posting at least 2 times a month, sometimes 3, basically every other week. And it's been great. The feedback we've been getting, the guest suggestions, it's really great to see that momentum building. And a huge thank you to the last few guests, Ashley Hall-Ty. Wow, what an amazing interview. If you missed Ashley's interview by any chance, go back and listen to it or watch it on YouTube. Lee Loughnane, we had Kenny Rampton, so many folks on here this year. My good buddy Emil and Clay Jenkins. I'm sure I'm forgetting folks already. That's the other problem with doing two times a month. So many trumpet players in and out of here, but each episode has something to give. And also thank you. I got a great email from Paul up in Wisconsin, and he says he listens to the podcast in the practice room. And he said it's like having Howie Shear and Peter Bond and Jim Manley in the practice room with me. And so it's great. It really means a lot. Thank you for the feedback, Paul, and from others who listen. Keep it coming. Again, this is we love doing this. I'm like a kid in a candy store getting to talk to some of the greatest trumpet players of our time and hear their stories. Speaking of which, and I want to get to speaking of stories, I want to get to Susan's interview here in a moment, but we have a lot going on. First of all, if for those of you who watch on YouTube, you might see some new guard bags behind me on the shelf. We got our shipment, and thankfully, it was a roller coaster for those of you around the world who follow the U.S. Tariff news. Not that I'm going to turn this into a political podcast by any means. However, from when our guard bags left the port and got to the port and then finally got to our shop, it was literally a roller coaster of how much we were going to need to pay in tariffs. Thankfully, because of the pause in the tariffs, the 90-day pause, we got these at the same price as last shipment. So we didn't have to raise prices on these. And we still have a discount available for podcast listeners, 15% off any of our guard bags in stock. Just use the code PODCAST during checkout to get that discount. And hopefully we'll be able to offer that in the future. We'll see how things go. But they have arrived lots of triples. That's their most popular bag. And I think we have 10 different styles of triples, both in the nylon, synthetic, and in the gorgeous leather. So check out our website, and we'll have the link in the description to where you can get those guard bags. Here in a few weeks, I will be going to the Hart School in Hartford, Connecticut for the IWBC, which, good timing. Susan Slaughter, our guest, is the founder of that organization. Of course, I'm talking about the International Women's Brass Conference. That is being held May 21st to the 24th, at least the vendor rooms. I think there's competitions and things before and after those dates. But I will be there May 21st to 24th at the Hart School in Hartford, Connecticut. I will have Reeves trumpet mouthpieces, several hundred. I will be doing valve alignments. I will have some of these guard bags, and I will have some mutes, some Ulven mutes, some Yupon mutes, some fun things, some fun exotic things. And if you have any trombone or French horn friends, let them know, because I will also have our DH, our Dylan Hart signature French horn mouthpieces with me, and a pretty complete set of the Brass Arc trombone mouthpieces. So come on out to Hartford, Connecticut. If you're anywhere in the area up in New England, come by and say hi to me. And if you're interested in getting a valve alignment, if you go to bobreeves.com/IWBC, you can pre-book your alignment, save some money off the cost of the alignment, and make sure I get your horn aligned at the booth right there at the conference. So I look forward to seeing you there. I'm not going to go into detail on the other events coming up, but just for your calendars, make note, ITG is the following week in Salt Lake City, Utah, bobreeves.com/ITG, and the William Adam Trumpet Festival in Clarksville, Tennessee at Austin Peay University. That's later in June. I think the dates for that are 19th to the 21st. Give or take a day. As we get closer, I'll have the exact days. That one you can go to bobreeves.com/William Adam if you want more information. So as Bob Reeves Brass is growing, so does our support for the community and ways we give back. We believe the future of brass music lies not only at the hands of the next generation of performers, but in the minds of the composers who dare to write something new for us. And that's why we're proud to sponsor the upcoming Los Angeles Brass Alliance concert, Next Up. And this is some information that Lab A has sent on to me. Join the Los Angeles Brass Alliance, also known as Lab A, 7 p.m. on May 4th at Glendale First Baptist Church for their second installation of Next Up. This is a free concert and generously sponsored by us. They said that. This free concert spotlights Lab A's annual collaboration between emerging LA-based composers and brass musicians. Lab A strongly believes that students, freelancers, and performers are responsible for ensuring the rich and vibrant future of brass performance. This concert is an investment in their musicians, these incredible composers, and the accessibility of new music to Los Angeles audiences, and even beyond, because they share their content on social media and YouTube. Their 2025 composer cohort hails from institutions such as the Jacobs School at Indiana University, the Herb Alpert School at UCLA, the Thornton School at USC, the Yale School of Music, the University of Northern Colorado, and Cal State University Northridge. Go Matadors. These 8 composers have written for every flavor of brass ensemble, from quintet to brass orchestra, pushing the boundaries of music for brass. Lab A hopes to see you on May 4th in Glendale for their season finale and the celebration of these 8 new works for brass. More information is available at labrassalliance.org, or check out at Los Angeles Brass Alliance on Instagram to keep up with their preparation for Next Up 2025. Huge shout out to that organization, and we look forward to some exciting things I can't quite announce yet for not just this season, but for next season. I can't spill the beans yet. Just say we have some even bigger plans that we're working on together for next season. But hope to see you there May 4th for Lab A's concert. Again, like everything, we'll have all of those links down in the description so you can find out more about them, even if you can't make their concert. I have one last thing I want to mention. A quick plug to my good friend, customer, and former podcast guest, episode 55. And I'm talking about Greg Wing, recently retired professor of trumpet at Morehead State University. He sent out this CD, graciously signed, and I've been listening to it here at the shop, Reflections on a Grateful Journey. And it kind of sums up Greg's career. Not that he's retired. He's retired from teaching, but he still plays, still teaches, and sounds absolutely amazing. Greg kind of put this together kind of as a culmination of his playing career, and it's available on iTunes. You can stream it on Spotify, although I definitely recommend if you can buy it on iTunes or buy the CD, we'll have the links to where you can get it. Lots of fabulous playing, of course, no doubt, with Greg. One of my favorite trumpet sounds out there. He's got professional big bands on some of the things. He's got strings on other tracks, gorgeous melodies, the kind of trumpet stuff you can listen over and over and over again. So check the links in the description or search for Greg Wing, Reflections on a Grateful Journey. You won't be disappointed. And Greg, if you're listening, thank you for the CD. I'm going to go put it on as soon as I'm done here. All right, that's enough news for today. Let's get right to my interview with Susan Slaughter. Joining me today is Susan Slaughter. Susan Slaughter is a trailblazer in the world of classical trumpet and a living legend of American orchestral music. Born in McCordsville, Indiana, she picked up the trumpet at age 10 and never looked back. After earning a coveted performer certificate from Indiana University, she broke barriers as the first woman to win a principal trumpet position in a major American symphony, securing the role with the Saint Louis Symphony Orchestra in 1972, a position she held with distinction for decades. Beyond her groundbreaking orchestral career, Susan has been a tireless advocate for music education, community outreach, and the advancement of women in brass performance. She founded the International Women's Brass Conference, Monarch Brass, and the Holiday Brass Concerts, which have raised over $1 million to support women brass musicians. Her legacy also includes memorable performances at Major League Baseball games, powerful community engagement through sacred music and education, and collaborations with icons like Wynton Marsalis and Doc Severinsen. From Grammy-nominated recordings to teaching at top institutions like Northwestern and Aspen, Susan Slaughter's influence spans generations and genres. Her accolades, including the ITG Honorary Award and the Grand Center Visionary Award, only begin to tell the story of a career defined by courage, excellence, and unwavering dedication to her craft and community. It's my honor to have my special guest today, Susan Slaughter. Oh, I'm so honored to have joining me on the other side of the bell, Susan Slaughter, in what looks like a much more beautiful part of the world than where I am here in LA. How you doing today, Susan?
I'm doing very well, John. Thank you.
And thank you for being on here. We met, I think, in person for the first time last year at IWBC in Mito City, Japan. Now, hopefully, you're going to be at IWBC this coming year, right? Coming up in a few weeks.
I will. It's towards the end of May.
Yeah.
May 21, I think, through the 24th.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk more about IWBC here in a little bit. I want to talk about your life some, but you were the founder of IWBC, so I wanted to bring that up front, how important that organization is and what you're doing to spread brass pedagogy and especially bring female players to the forefront after years and years of the opposite, shall we say?
In the shadows. We were in the shadows.
Yes. So with that context, let's start from the very beginning. How did you find the trumpet, or the trumpet find you?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Many years ago, some churches would have what they call revivals, and they would bring in special music, and a lot of those people would play the trumpet. And then a gentleman by the name of Rafael Mendez was put on TV, and so I could watch him on TV, and I thought, wow, I really liked the sound of the instrument. I really liked the repertoire. Of course, words I didn't know at the time, repertoire, but anyway. And the unique thing is we didn't even have a band in my school. We had like 18 in my class, and they hired a female band director. So I was in 5th grade. She brought the general music store in, and they put out all their instruments on display. And my parents, after the presentation, said, well, what would you like to play? And I pointed at, then was the cornet, which is just fine for me. Being a small person, easy to handle and hold. And so I had taken piano lessons, so I knew how to read music. I could read bass clef, and so once in a while they'd want me to play trombone, so I could just pick up the trombone and play, from the bass clef. So I think one of the important things, if a lot of people don't like it, but piano gives you a really good foundation for everything. Even theory. You can just hear those chords, see the chords on the piano, and I think it's a very useful tool to have. If you don't like piano, think of it as a tool so that you can use it to your advantage. So going through high school, we consolidated with a larger school, and they had an excellent concert band. So one of the gentlemen in the trumpet section at this new school was Bobby Milliken. And evidently he has played a lot for Streisand, for her concerts, Barbra Streisand. It's just interesting because we graduated. Bobby went right to New York. I went to Indiana University, studied with Herb Mueller. And years later, when we had a reunion, we got back together. And we're celebrating both of our successes, but he in one line and myself in another.
Fascinating. And it all started, it was Indiana, right? Is that where you grew up?
Yes, in Indiana. Just a little town in the middle of the state, not far from Indianapolis. And I will say this, not that I hold a grudge, but we had a jazz band, but women were not allowed to play in the band.
Really?
Yeah, but if they had a shortage of trumpets, they always called me. So I got to play as a extra,
And this was in the high school?
Yes.
You weren't not even considered to be able to play in the jazz band.
Well, because of my gender. So, but that's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
So when I went to IU, of course, I had gone to their summer camp a couple of times. This is an interesting story, I think. My parents really didn't know much about music, so I'm kind of on my own. But the first time, I guess it was my sophomore year, they sent me to the IU band camp, but it actually ended up being Stan Kenton's jazz group. And so I played fourth because I had no idea about the style. And it was a good experience, but I was pretty lost. I remember the trombonist, Buddy Baker, was my spiritual guidance there. But anyway.
Kind of helping you through and...
Helping me through, right.
Jeez,
He says, no, you'll get this. So then the next 2 years I went to the regular band camp and got to play in the orchestra. And I thought, this is what I want to do.
So that's where you fell in love with orchestral playing, was that the second year. So Stan Kenton, not so much, but... I
liked it, but I was just lost. I was overwhelmed.
Yeah. So, and you'd mentioned, so no one musical in your family. Did you get private lessons outside of your schooling, or were you just learning through band? And
I was with my band director until my junior year. Bob Myers was his name, and he played the trombone exceedingly well. And there was a summer band in Indianapolis, John Phillips, I think. So he would take us more talented people with him, and we would go to the band rehearsal. And the gentleman who played second trumpet in a symphony was the sole cornetist. So it was all a very good experience. Couldn't have been arranged any better, I don't think, as far as giving me opportunities to play and everything.
Fascinating. So the decision to go to IU, but also to be a music major, was that a no-brainer for you, or is that something you had to consider? I
was going to be a performance major, and I got to IU. My teacher, Herb Mueller, was on sabbatical when I auditioned. So when I go into my first lesson, he said, I see that you've signed up for performance. I'm going to recommend you change that to music education. Now, I'm basically a shy person, okay? So I say that because for me to have made this statement is pretty remarkable in my mind. So I said to Mr. Mueller, you haven't heard me play. If it's okay, I'd like to stay in the performance program, and then in January, if you don't think I'm qualified, I'll switch to music education. So he agreed to that. I bargained with the teacher that I barely knew, and he went along with it.
So, I mean, he was trying to deter you from being a performance major.
I think he was trying to look out for me in terms if I didn't make it as a performance major. That's what I think. I think that in his mind, it was like, well, symphonies aren't hiring women, not on the trumpet,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we're talking about 1963.
Yeah. Yeah.
So long
Well,
time ago.
I mean, so, and what was that like for you? Like, what were your feelings? I mean, did you double down, you know, or like,
I just went with it. I just, you know, I had my say, and he said, okay. They never brought it up again.
mm-hmm,
I studied with him, and then he had a sabbatical coming. So I studied one semester with Adams, Mr. Adams,
mm-hmm,
Bill Adams, and then back with Mr. Mueller.
hmm,
Louis Davidson was the other teacher there, and he would on a Monday night have brass lit class. So I would attend that, and I would sit as far down in the section as I could go, because, you know, there were graduate students and several other more experienced players than me there.
mm-hmm.
And so I learned a tremendous amount between those three teachers. I am very grateful that they took me seriously. They provided me for opportunities. For instance, Mr. Adams had a gentleman by the name of Larry Wiseman,
Mm-hmm.
who was very prominent in Indianapolis lead playing area. And so I go to the first rehearsal. I'm playing second to Larry for an orchestra. And I have a lesson with Mr. Adams. And next time I look at the board, I've been switched with Larry, put ahead of him. And I went to the next rehearsal. And I said, Larry, I don't. He said, oh, no. I want you to play first. He didn't feel comfortable playing that literature. And I guess after Mr. Adams heard me play, he decided that I would be a better choice there. So they gave me opportunities to play first. And I just practiced about 3 hours a day. I know that doesn't sound like much compared to what maybe Doc Severinsen can do, but
I don't know. I mean, 3 hours. At Indiana, I mean, Indiana's known for its brass departments throughout the years, but so I find it interesting because we've had a lot of students of Mr. Adam on the podcast, not a lot of from Herb Mueller and Larry Davidson, although some of them have switched or take some lessons with the other studios. So was it difficult for you to switch teachers, or were you just kind of being like a sponge and absorbing what everyone was given to you?
When I go to a teacher, I always think about they have something to offer me. Why would I challenge what they have to say? I'm just going to absorb it, listen to it, apply it as best I can, and hopefully have more than one lesson with them. And if I have questions, if it's not working, I may or may not ask, this doesn't feel like it's working for me. What do you think I'm doing wrong? Not that they're doing something wrong. So I always and even as a professional here in St. Louis, every 4, 5, 6 years, I would go to somebody, but that would be my attitude. Man, I don't know anything. You tell me what you see and what I need to know and what I need to do. I'll get more out of them than if I'm arguing with them. I even went and saw Claude Gordon for several lessons.
How did that come about?
Well, I wasn't satisfied with my upper register, and I felt like there was something I didn't grasp about it. So he talked about the position of the tongue. Well, I'm a fairly good whistler, and I could see, sort of inside my mouth as I would whistle that the tongue would be changing positions. If I hit a certain note and went back to it, that position of the tongue was the same each time. So let's say I would get up to a high C, and I would fall off of the high C to the B flat. And when that would happen, and I became more aware of my tongue position, I could see that as I was trying to do a crescendo, I actually blew the tongue out of position. So if I try to lock it in and hold it, then I could not make the note go lower, even if I was trying to, but if I still locked the tongue into that position. So to this day, I still think that he was right. Tongue determines pitch.
Wow. So, and then you started as figuring out the upper register and ended up learning something that you've used your whole career, obviously passing down to your students now. Correct me if I'm wrong, he was in Los Angeles, right? Wasn't he out here?
He was. So I would finish a concert on Sunday afternoon, get on a late flight, have lessons on Monday, maybe on Tuesday morning, fly back to St. Louis for rehearsal on Wednesday. So it was one time I finished the concert. I'm ready to go out the door to go to the airport. And the personnel manager stops me and says, I have the nurse from a Los Angeles hospital saying that Mr. Gordon has to have emergency surgery, and he would not allow them to go into surgery until he knew the nurse had reached you so that you wouldn't come.
Gee. Man, well, that's amazing. So you didn't get on the flight that time?
No, I was able to,
But a testament to how much he cared about his students.
Pretty remarkable, really. I mean, he put his own life ahead of trying to reach me,
Got to make sure you don't get on the plane. And, wow.
He had quad bypass surgery. So it was a serious surgery back in that day, really. Back in the 80s, low 80s.
You were in the symphony then.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I was in the symphony from 1969 to 2010.
A testament to your lifelong learning is you have your position already and you're in, established career and you're still working on improving and learning.
I think what helped me was that I was willing to do that. Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of a double buzz start in the middle 70s. And I was just trying to play too loud, practicing all the time too loud, thinking, I don't know, John, you sit in the section, you hear all this sound around you, and then when you're practicing by yourself, you want to hear all this sound. But anyway, then in the middle 70s, I went to see Arnold Jacobs to work on this double buzz I was having. So somehow I was just interrupting the airstream a little bit too much. He came up with a lot of very good advice for me and things I still use. So a lot of it had to do with maybe some pressure I was creating, trying to play loud. He backed me off volume-wise. He said, just find a nice mezzo forte. So that was something I could carry through the register without having that buzz, the double buzz. He said, well, just play a little louder mezzo forte. So mezzo forte for me is a pretty relaxed volume. Mm-hmm. So I played just a little louder mezzo forte. And then he said, well, just play a little bit louder mezzo forte. And so I just carried that relaxation through all the registers and learned how to do that. But he was very helpful. So each person I've gone to, I just take the approach, I don't know anything, and they share whatever they have to share and help me.
And you add it to your bag of tricks. I love it. And I want to go back a little bit because I want to get into the process of you joining the First Orchestra, right? It was Toledo, correct? Was that the first?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, were you on the audition circuit at that point, or how did that job come around?
I would have been 1967. I'd sent out 30 letters of inquiry because in those days there was a lot of turnover. People couldn't live on the salary that the symphony paid them, and so then they'd have to go into another area. So there was often as high as 30 openings. So I got invited to 3 auditions. And when I got to the first one, it was in Milwaukee, I heard that there was an opening in Houston. So I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't hear from them. So as soon as I got back home to the university, because I was a senior, I called Houston and I said, oh, I hear that you have the opening there. Did you not receive my letter of inquiry? And, yes, yeah, we have it right here, Susan Slaughter. I said, yes. Oh, we didn't think you wanted to come this far. Oh, let me assure you, I can be there. Just tell me when to come. We'll send you everything. Hang up. Well, what is the date today? I'm still waiting for them to send me my packet. They never did. So after that, I signed my name S.J. Slaughter, and I got invited to everything. So in Toledo, that was one of the auditions places they would let me come. There was no committee. It was just the conductor and the personnel manager. The one piece they had me play over and over and over was the call in Zarathustra. So after about the 5th time, I stopped and I said, I'm sorry, do you have something you want me to do differently with this call? He says, no, I just can't believe that you can hit it every time. So
they said that in the audition.
Mm-hmm. So then I'm going to just skip ahead a second, because when I became the principal in St. Louis, Adel Levart came for a concert, and he had Zarathustra that we were playing. So with first rehearsal, he goes through it 5, 6, 7 times. Every time he stops, this call, this particular place in the piece where the high C call is, he stops and says, flutes, blah, 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 blah. Oboes, blah, 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 blah. Plays it again. Flutes, again, 5 times. So every band, like 4 or 5 rehearsals. So we get to the dress rehearsal, and he does it another 5 times, that section. So I leaned over to my second trumpet and I said, how many times is that? And Roger, 23. He had me play the call 23 times.
23
One of
times.
One of the string players came up and says, why don't you miss it so we can go on? I said, no, I'm not going to miss it. I'm not going to give him that satisfaction. So anyway, would he have done that to Bud Herseth? Probably. Yeah, he probably would have done it to Bud. I mean, consider the personality.
You think it was conductor versus trumpet, basically. It wasn't.
I don't know.
No, there's no way to know, but it's still. Yeah, it's so frustrating, because in a group that's supposed to be artistic and creative and communicate music and one of the highest art forms, to see what seems so petty.
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
Well, I already passed the test. I won the job.
Yeah,
the test is already done. Why are you testing me? Silly.
And it even started back in the audition. And I want to. I mean, I don't want to dwell on this necessarily, but you said you sent out 30 letters originally and heard back from 3, and then when you signed your name, so people didn't know it was Susan, it was just SJ.
Yeah, just SJ.
You got invited to everything. Yeah. I can't imagine what was the frustration, or how do you feel knowing that at that time in your career, that you had such an uphill battle?
Well, I think you just have to think about the times. When it happens now to people, I'm very angry, because we've already proven ourselves now. I could see maybe back then you looking at me and saying, oh, a woman, I don't know, she can carry the load, and this is a really tough job, and look at these people only lasted 10 years, and that person went 15 or 20. I held the position for about 40 years. Now, I say about because when I was first in the orchestra, I came in as the 4th trumpet in 69. In 70, the principal decided, his name was Chandler Getty. He was from, I think, New Mexico, and played the Santa Fe Opera. And that's where he wanted to be in the summertime, not in humid St. Louis. So our contract back in those days, the orchestra contract, would only guarantee work until the end of May. So if February 2nd, they couldn't say, yeah, we can guarantee you work in the summer, you can go somewhere else. So when he went somewhere else, they came to me, because I played principal in Toledo. Would you like to? I said, okay, I'll give it a try, But here's the thing. If I'd really messed up, I didn't have tenure. So I could have been fired. So it was a risk, but I was not smart enough to know that was a risk. So anyway, but then look at the opportunity I had. We did pictures at an exhibition, Verdi Requiem, a lot of big works that summer. And so that gave me an opportunity to play principal, and nobody complained.
And then
that I'm aware of.
That you were aware of. And then eventually you were offered tenure, correct? Is that, you were there for 40 years. So
yeah. So the only time I worried is when we had a European conductor, because they tend to have all male brass section.
Yeah, I mean, were quite behind on the times up through the 80s and 90s. And I mean, in my history, when Vienna and some of those finally allowed women into the orchestra.
We'll let the harp in, we'll let the pianist in. Not even string players, but now they do have a good representation now. But I don't think still in the brass, maybe horns in the brass section.
Yeah. I mean, did you realize at the time that you were the first principal trumpet of a major orchestra that was female?
They being the symphony, made a big deal out of it.
Okay.
They did
Were you
a lot
comfortable
of
with that, or did you just want to show up and play?
In a principal position, I think you have a responsibility to the public, the people who come to your concerts, because you're in a high-profile chair. Then I think extra responsibilities come with that. So no, it was fine. In a sense, it was a way to document it. So now years from now, people want to say, no, there was never a woman in the St. Louis Symphony. People can either go to articles or they can go to the old symphony programs, say, well, there was one here for a long time. So.
Yeah. And you can be an inspiration for up and coming young female brass players who didn't have the kind of examples that you had, which is really
one of the
inspiring.
reasons for the IWBC, the International Women's Brass Conference. So we'll go to that whenever you want to, but that was one of the goals to provide.
Yeah, and I do want to get to that. I want to talk more about your orchestra experience. I always love asking. I mean, do you remember your first rehearsal or first concert with St. Louis?
Yes, I was supposed to play fourth on Zarathustra. I ended up playing second because that gentleman had just had hernia surgery. So I'm playing next to the principal. That was pretty special, but also I had to be on top of my game. Right away he would be able to tell if I could do it, felt comfortable, supported him. When he played the call, he missed it in one of the rehearsals. I can't remember, maybe in one of the concerts, and he leaned over and said, I don't want them to think it's too easy to play that high C. I don't want them to think it's too easy.
But he didn't have to do it 23 times.
No, I think I hold that record.
Any favorite repertoire?
I think all brass players love Mahler. I enjoy that. And Bruckner, you can just really sing on the instrument. We actually get a melody. I'm not real fond of playing Mozart or Brahms, but they're beautiful pieces and composers that have definitely written some gorgeous stuff. I just would prefer to play Mahler or Bruckner. Stravinsky's fun. I mean, there's a lot of even contemporary composers that write some beautiful things. We certainly performed a large number of contemporary pieces with Leonard Slatkin as our music director, and then David Robertson later on. When we would have a European conductor as our music director, we would pull back from a lot of that and play more of the standard repertoire. So, it's what it was.
But you like the lyrical stuff. You like to have a melody.
Yeah, I feel like I can contribute more. I mean, I don't mind playing harmony and all of that, but just to go bop, bop, bop. That's not music for me.
Yeah. I want to spend a little bit of time, at least, on the different roles in an orchestral trumpet section, because, like you said, you started in fourth. I mean, you got bumped up to second for your first concert, principal for decades. I mean, can you kind of define what the different roles are, and if there's a young player getting into the section for the first time, what they should be aware of?
Well, number one, respect the people around you. They could make or break. Especially if you're a non-tenured player, they can help make or break your ability to get tenure. So show them with respect, especially older players. They have played this repertoire. It may be that in my case, the second trumpet said to me one time, he said, well, in St. Louis, we do it this way. Well, I could have said, well, Louis Davidson told me to play it this way. No, Louis Davidson wasn't in St. Louis. I took his information, used it, and maybe 20 years later, I said, Roger, could we try this? I know this is not traditional St. Louis, but I think this will really work better. And it worked better. But after 20 years, let me just go to Roger here for a second. When I was named the principal trumpet, won that job, won that position, every time I would say something to the second trumpet, his shoulders would go up. I would say, okay. So we were playing a Haydn symphony, and they didn't need us for a couple of movements. I said, let's go off stage. We don't have to sit out here. So he went off stage, and I said, Roger, have I done something to ruffle your feathers? Have I upset you about something? And he said, no, I'm just not used to taking orders from a woman. He says, I just need a little time, but I will overcome this. But it's just some kind of a culture thing that every time I would say something, and I didn't say a lot, don't get me wrong, and never did I say it in a dominating way, like I usually would say, let's try it this way. His shoulders would come up. So after 2 years, he no longer had that response. So, but he was very helpful to me. When we do a pop show, like I told you earlier, I wasn't allowed to play in a jazz band. So we do a pop show, and he'd say, the style here is, and I would do it the way he said, because that's where his strength was. So respect your section. One thing that I like the second player to do when we're playing octaves is the second player plays louder than you do, and you just sit on top of that sound. So forte, you're mezzo forte, and it just carries beautifully. If you try to compete, then you end up with more distorted sound. So that's one thing. Respect your second trumpet player so that they'll play louder. Or if you have a unison and you need just a little break so you're not pushing so hard, ask them to play a little stronger in this section. The third player often is the assistant. And here's the other thing that I learned from a first horn in the symphony at the time. He would always make sure the assistant was playing first on the youth concerts. And they did a lot of good repertoire. You know, one that jumps in my mind here is Firebird by Stravinsky. So there's a lot to play for the horn in a number of pieces. It's not just horns. It doesn't just play offbeats. Like if you're in a band, a lot of times you play a lot of offbeats. But in the orchestra, you have a much more prominent role. So Roland said to me, why don't you have so-and-so play the youth concert? Because they need to be able to step into your position and have some experience having led the section. You know, if you become ill, it's not just like suddenly they haven't played first for 6 months and now they have to fill in for you. It's just, no, you need to give them things responsible. So that would be the third player. The fourth player would, move up to third. And it's I think, important. We would actually do once a month, because we did so much contemporary music, we would get together and have a sectional. And Tage Larson played second with us for 2 years. So when he came in, I said, well, we just standard routine. We have a sectional once a month. And I'm not certain what he thought at the time, but years later, a couple of years ago, he was here visiting, and he looked at me and he said, I now realize you were doing those sectionals for me. And I said, not necessarily. It was for all of us. We all have different levels of learning, things. So we go at different speeds at how we grasp something. So as the principal player, I felt like it was my idea, my responsibility to determine if we were going to double tongue something, single tongue. A certain passage might have a combination of both, and how we were going to do it so that we were all on the same page. May or may not have been what they would have done on their own, but at least they knew what I was thinking of. And then the other idea was, what do we have? Because it's contemporary music. I don't want to be sitting there trying to figure out if the second, third, or fourth is doubling something with me, or it's a weird chord and we need to tune it a certain way, that's easier if you're separated and can hear each other versus being the orchestra when all the percussion is behind you, all the horns are blowing into your face. So it's just something I thought was important, and that the other players in the section would benefit as well as I benefited.
Fascinating, and it builds camaraderie as well, I'm sure. And but it seems like the communication is key, right? Just being open and honest with everyone and listening, and as you said, respect those who came before you. Seems simple, but not always in practice, right?
Well, you get the job, and you may go in and say, "Look at me." No, you don't need to do that. They're already looking at you. You won the job. They're already looking at you. Now just do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing because you were in St. Louis for 40 years, you felt at home there. Did you ever consider moving to other orchestras or auditioning, or why did you stay in St. Louis?
I did take other auditions. In Boston, I think it was the position when Charlie won it, Charlie Schluter. Mm-hmm. So after the audition, I just asked for a little feedback, and the personnel manager said, well, we didn't feel like your sound would fit in the section, which was true. They had a brighter sound, and I had a more warm sound and not quite so penetrating. I was in the finals with Phil Smith, Louis Ranger for the New York Philharmonic job. Mm-hmm. And when I walked on stage, according to Johnny Ware, who passed this along years later, Zubin Mehta said, what's a woman doing up there? We're not going to have a woman in the brass section.
Oh, my gosh.
So they let me play, and of course I didn't know he'd said that. So I played my audition and went home.
Oh, my gosh.
Would I have won the position if they'd had a different attitude? I don't know. Do you think anybody on the committee is going to vote for me after he said that? Johnny Ware said he did, but who knows?
Who knows? Well, that's the thing, is we'll never know. And I can't. Yeah, I'm speechless. I mean, I internally, I can't imagine what goes through you, your feelings and your thought process, your mindset when these things are happening. I don't know.
Well, it's just it was that time. It is what you hope to accomplish. Kind of helping people change their minds, but the culture is there. It's just like the culture of discriminating against blacks or Hispanics or Asians is a culture that we have to figure out how to break that down, and we haven't been very successful yet.
Yeah, I mean, we're still, I think, in our infancy stage. It reminds me, Justice Ginsburg, someone asked her at some point, totally unrelated, but also related to trumpet. Someone asked her if, I think in the media, if she thought that, we've crossed that bridge in terms of equality now that there's women on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And I think her answer was something on the lines of, well, we've had 200 years of 9 men on the court, and no one's, batted an eye. We'll know we've reached equality when there's 200 years of 9 women on the court and no one bats an eye, as only she could say that in her, in her way. And that's
right. Yeah.
I mean, I think kind of a reflection of same thing. Oh, great. There's a woman in a brass section. We've made it. Yeah. It's like
right,
the fact that you've noticed that and it sticks out means that we still haven't, which may be a good segue into the IWBC. What brought you to create that organization?
Well, there used to be a orchestra seminar in the Tetons called the Grand Tetons Orchestra Festival or something similar. And they would meet a month before the regular festival orchestra would come in for the July and August concerts. So it's very similar to, say, Tanglewood or Aspen, where people come in, young players come in that are either outstanding in their college years or young professionals we would sit in the orchestra with them for the first read-through of the piece, and then we would remove ourselves and then just sit out in the audience and be coaches for me for the trumpet section. This one particular year, there were several young ladies that came, a couple on trombone, maybe 3 on horn and 2 or 3 on trumpet, and we would get together and talk and, just exchange ideas, exchange what their situations were. And one of them said, it's too bad we can't have some kind of a conference where we all come together and just share everything that we've learned. And so that seed was planted. And I thought, well, how can we make this happen? And I wasn't certain anybody would go along with us. So I decided I would do a survey. I have a book called the Ixom book, which has all the major symphony orchestra names in it. So I went through and tried to figure out what names were female so I could send them a survey. I got a hold of the existing Horn Society, the Trombone Association, went through again and tried to figure out the female members. So I came up with 1,500 names. I asked questions like, there's been some discussion, do you think we should try to create a conference where all of our instruments, the trombones, horns, etc., can come together and share what we've learned and be of support to each other? The survey came back, so we had about 500 return. If you've done a survey, 3% is a nice return. 10% is pretty overwhelming, unusual, but 30% is a mandate. Mm-hmm. So then I decided I have to do this. Probably because I was principal in the St. Louis Symphony, I could project that and help raise money to that end. And a lot of people here in St. Louis were very generous and kind, including our union, to help finance the first conference in 93. So of 1993, 97, and we've now gone to about every other year. So every 2 years we have a conference. Before I did that, after I got the survey, I called all the presidents in these various conferences. The person who was president of the ITG said, oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that, please. He says, well, we'll increase the number of women performers. And I said, that's not really the issue. That's not it. So Vern Kagereis was president of the ITA at the Trombone Association. And Vern says, I love the idea. Do it. I'll help you. I'll do everything I can to help you. So there were these 2 responses that was perhaps repeated. I'll just leave it at that. So in 93, we had our first conference, and it was like, I mentioned the word earlier, revival. What happens in revival is people realize they haven't been living the way they want to and try to express what they think was going wrong and have a renewal of some sort, like a spiritual renewal. This was like a spiritual thing. Women could talk about anything they wanted to, and none of us were going to call their bosses and say, ooh, guess what they said, guess what the situations they've talked about. Everybody could say what they wanted. Other people have had the same experience, expressed their way of dealing with it. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman who was second trumpet in the Baltimore Symphony, Langston Fitzgerald, African-American gentleman, stood up as we were having a discussion one time. He stood up and he says, I know what you're feeling. He pointed at his skin. He says, because I have the same thing. I deal with the same thing. So, it brought an awareness that, oh my gosh, of course. He says, I'm pulled over at least 3 times a year because I drive a nice car and it's black and I'm black. And they think that I'm a drug dealer. So I'm pulled over. I'm not speeding, So you just become more aware of things. So what I like at the conference is we still do that. we try to address subjects that other conferences are afraid to touch, we'll say. So the discussion of transgender was pretty appropriate now with what's going on, or situation with the gay community, or we don't necessarily solve anything, but we're ready to talk about it and to see what we can do. And we may not make much progress, but we're not trying to hide it and push it under the carpet. We want to be more head on. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're talking about this because you think, oh, it's 2025, we've moved on, we're a better place, and there's still some, we take a few steps forward, and then we take 4 steps backwards, and people get upset because some of these stories get out, like your audition with the New York Phil. I'm sure there's people that have never heard that story before and think, oh, that stuff would never happen, but it has. And until those stories get out there and people realize how bad the prejudice is, and the stereotyping, but importantly, a place for the people that are experiencing that have a place to talk about it and to try to solve the issue. How do we move forward? What's even more frustrating is we're talking about the arts. We're talking about the arts. We're talking about, talk about a thing with camaraderie and a common goal and to make the world a better place, and that we're shooting our neighbor down because of what they look like or where they came from or what their choices are. Just, I don't know.
Go back far enough. We are all immigrants. So what's the problem?
Yeah.
So tell me, I'm going to switch the role here a second. You were at the Japan conference. That was your first? Was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Did you have time to attend any of the recitals or anything?
Unfortunately, I was there by myself, so I was in the vendor room manning the booth the whole time. But my wife and my children went to some of the concerts.
What amazes me is that we've become familiar with people here in the States, and we know the outstanding players like Ashley Hall.
And which, as she's the previous podcast of yours, I just interviewed her. But great, amazing player, and wonderful person.
And yes, I have a lot of respect and admiration for her. Anyway, getting to Japan, we absolutely knew nothing about the players there. And it's just incredible how talented, and they've progressed as far as we have. And it's just, there were players from Taiwan, from South Korea, just all over Australia. And we never heard of them, and they're just fantastic. So that was important, I think, for the IWBC to go to Japan and to open those doors, and hopefully that they will be able to now establish whatever network they need to establish to help them to grow and develop as performers.
It was a wonderful event. I'm glad I was able to go, and everyone who went, for those who weren't aware, we all literally weathered a typhoon to get there because a typhoon blew in that weekend of all things, and folks still showed up. They still played their recitals, and it was a great event. And what a gorgeous building that was too.
Perfect. It was
really, really a fun event. And we have the Heart School coming up May 19th to 24th is the next one.
Right.
Now, are you involved in the planning of the conference, or?
I just do a little bit here and there, and my little bit is something I really like. We call it the awards committee. And one of the things that bothered me was people who had successful careers in the past and basically went unnoticed, in a sense, unless it was their own little community, but nationally were unnoticed. We bring them to the conference and we give them an award. We're bringing Kate Moore from over in London, plays in, I think, what would be the London Radio Orchestra as a principal trumpet. And she's been there 30 years. I've just now heard of her. So we're bringing her over as a pioneer. Nancy Jordan, married name Faco, is a horn player. She actually played principal horn in the Chicago Symphony back in the 60s for a year or two. So we're honoring her. So people like Kathy Brannigan in Denver, Colorado, who started the Denver Brass and has a successful career there and teaching at the university. We're bringing her as the Beacon Award, and the Beacon being that maybe people don't know about her worldwide, but certainly around the Denver area and the state of Colorado, she's had a huge influence on the people there. So I like that part because I always want to be pointing to other people. I don't really want to point to myself. I've had my time in the spotlight. I want to broaden that spotlight and make sure it hits more people.
Pass the torch. I love it. Just folks, myiwbc.org will have the link to get you to the conference website. If you want to register and go, it's in Connecticut at the Hart School in Hartford, Connecticut. Another beautiful area of the country. I'm looking forward to being there.
Well, I think we went there with the orchestra, but it was get on the bus, go out of New York City, play the concert, get on the bus, and drive back. So I look forward to seeing it. And the other thing, John, that we do live auditions. We have our competitions. We don't do a preliminary by tape. We think that people need the experience, students need the experience of having a live audition. So the grand prize, if you pass round one and you get to the finals, we just choose one grand prize and then we have a second and third, but that's $5,000. So we've had several young men coming and participating. And while my feeling is, I'm sorry, a woman didn't win that prize. But it's the way a live audition would be. Yeah. The best person won. And that's what we want to create. So every round is behind a curtain. So we're not going to be biased in any way.
Doing it by example. Doing it by example. Yeah.
So that's our goal.
So we'll make sure we have the links to all that, and we'll hope you see many of you listeners there at the IWBC this May. And if you're listening to this in the future, then maybe we'll see you at some of the future conferences. And again, we're glad to be on board helping sponsor the conference and be in the vendor room. My goal is to eventually be big enough here at Bob Reeves Brass that I can go and see the recitals. And I like to tell folks over the last 25 years, I have missed more great concerts and master classes, but that's my job. That's my lot in life, is to be in the vendor room. And I also love it there too. I get to see a lot of great folks. That's where we got to connect. So wouldn't have happened, John, if we weren't there. Yes.
I'll sit at the table for you so you can go hear something.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, dinner's on me. We'll trade. Although I'm sure you're pulled a million different directions at these conferences. So if it's after the conference, that's fine too. Speaking of auditions, I want to switch gears a little bit. Actually, we do have a lot of young listeners out there, a lot of young aspiring orchestral players. Can you take us through your audition prep and/or what you put your students through leading up to an audition?
I think one of the most important things as a student is that you do a lot of listening. The members of the committee, and we have a 9-member committee in the orchestra, elected by the orchestra, they hear the passage that you're playing. They hear their part and how it fits in. So they're used to hearing things a certain way. So if you can listen, even to the orchestra, if they have recorded this piece, that'll give you a little bit of an edge in terms of tone, tempos, style, things that we would be listening for. A lot of people can play the notes now. A lot of people can play the tonguing passages, but not a lot of people bring any depth of knowledge about how the piece really goes. So it's more than just hitting the notes. So that's one of the things that you as a student or applicant for the job needs to think about. As you're preparing, one of the tricks that I would use for, let's say, recording sessions, I would take the passage, Let's say Petrushka, although we've never recorded Petrushka. This is the pictures, we've recorded that. Mm-hmm. I would play the promenade practicing 3 times perfect, a little contract with myself. Then I stop. Then I take a little break. I don't mean 20 minutes, but a minute or so. Then I go back and play the passage again, 3 times perfect. Now, why? One of the things you have to do in an audition is stay focused. How can you stay focused? If you have practiced doing something 3 times perfect, you know that you only have to play it once. If they ask you to play it again, you programmed yourself, you say, I can play this 3 times perfect. I only have to play it once again, etc. Playing the Collins Zarathustra, I can play it 3 times perfect. I only have to play it 23. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Exactly. You beat me to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's consistency is probably the most important. Can you miss a note in the audition? Well, every once in a while you have a conductor that says, oh, but they missed a note. And the brass section is saying, but their sound fits in. Everything else was perfect. They missed 1 note. It is, after all, a brass instrument. And they got it, nailed it the next time. So we don't know what your problem is. Anyway, that's another story.
That's great advice. But being on a panel, like, can you tell, is there like different severities and misnote? Like, can you tell if the misnote is just because it was a human error or if it was something inherent, an inherent trouble in that player's, approach?
Yes, you can tell by the way they are approaching the note and the way they play their scales, the way they center the sound with the attack. You can tell if it's going to possibly be a little bit of a problem. Okay. And they may or may not play it perfectly, but the way they present the intonation, let's say, you can tell it's not quite locked in. So intonation, rhythm, the 2 most important. If you play musically or in the proper style for each excerpt, that's a real plus. So that's why the listening is so important. And don't fail. Go ahead and listen to singers too, because there's a certain sound that they produce that has a lot of life to it, ambience, and you want to be able to produce that in your trumpet or horn or trombone sound.
Who are your favorite singers? Who do you listen to?
Well, this is very, very long ago. Joan Sutherland was a coloratura, and she could it was such a clear sound. I mean, I'd never think about this. I grew up on the farm. The only classical record I had was Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 4, and I'd never heard a singer like this. When I heard her singing, I went out and bought her recordings because it was crystal clear. It rang. It just really vibrated in such I'm trying to find the right words, but it was exciting to hear, and she would do the, which one is it? I think it's Mozart, but
Yeah.
And every note dead on, beautiful sound, clear as it could be. And I'm thinking, that's the way I want to sound. Beautiful sound, as clear as it can be.
You brought that into your own playing. A couple last questions. You mentioned in college you were a practicer 3 hours a day was regularly. Did you maintain that throughout your orchestral career, or did you tone that down depending on what your concert schedule was like?
No, I practiced a lot in my professional career. Yeah. What's interesting, if something didn't go as well as I wanted it to in a concert, I would get home at 11 o'clock at night, start practicing and maybe stop at 1 and have a concert the next day. So it was important to me that I fix whatever the problem was. If a person in the orchestra would come up and say, we had a horn player that was an assistant and suddenly kind of thrown into a long-term being the assistant and was really good, phenomenal at jumping in if the principal got ill and had to play 2 or 3 concerts for the principal would be phenomenal. But over the course of 6 months, it took its toll. It's a lot of pressure. And he came up after a performance one night. He came up and said, "How was it last night? People, I read the paper. They really bombed me." And I said, "Don't think about last night. You've got tonight. Focus on tonight." I didn't say, "Yeah, it wasn't very good." I just said, "Don't think about last night. That's gone. You can't do anything. Think about tonight. Just go out there and nail it."
Pick up and move on. Love it.
Yeah.
And
It's hard to do.
It is. Yeah, easier said than done, but still a great mindset to have. And we wouldn't be a trumpet podcast unless we got a little geeky, talked about equipment. Would you mind kind of going through your arsenal, your favorite horns and the different keys, and throw some mouthpieces in there as well?
Okay. Well, let's do the horns first. So I've played Bach, the C trumpet, and a Bach B flat trumpet for many, many years. I had a Bach D trumpet. So the C trumpet is a 239 bell with an Edelstein pipe. Mm-hmm. And I like that because the way I produce the sound, it helps me to focus the sound a little bit better. So it's an aid to me. Mm-hmm. Other people may have a real focused sound and you need to go to the 229 bell, which helps maybe broaden it. So, and whether what I just said is true or not, I don't know. It sounds true to me when I play those two bells. So that's how it works for me. Then I had a D trumpet. It was a 236 bell. Loved it. I did a lot of work with it. In those days, it was not as good as our contemporary D, E flat trumpets. I bought a Schilke D, E flat. I played that for years. Back in the middle 80s, we were recording Symphony No. 3 by Copland. And I was playing my E flat, and I'd had a Bach 229 bell made so I could slide onto the E flat, the Schilke E flat. But it wasn't giving me enough sound as I wanted. So I had played, I'd heard that Blackburn trumpets were producing the E flat D trumpet. And so I asked if I could borrow an instrument for this recording session. They only had one available that was going to a student. And he said, Cliff said, "Well, I don't want to tell you I'll send it to you without talking to the student. It's their instrument." I said, "Okay." I said, "Maybe I could help. Would you tell the student I'll give them $500 a week to rent their instrument?" Which by the time I finished was paid for maybe a third or a half of the instrument, So the student said yes. Played that and bought one. My friend I mentioned, Langston Fitzgerald, he wanted to try it, so I mailed it to him. He mailed it back and said he was going to go down and work with Cliff. And so he ended up gold plating the bell, which added more depth to the sound. So then, of course, I had to have a gold plated bell. So Blackburn D, E flat trumpet really helped extend my career. Had a Schilke piccolo, Yamaha flugelhorn. Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, that's probably what 99% of your playing was on those
Yes.
5 or 6 horns.
Yeah.
Quite the arsenal. And then what was your main mouthpieces?
Main mouthpieces, I started out my senior year going to Toledo with a 5C. Mm-hmm. I took some lessons from Bernie Edelstein, who was big into the 1 1/4 C, so I switched to that. So that was a Bach. And I tried some of the Reeves mouthpieces. I used those in the 70s. And as we went along, I came across the Warburton mouthpieces, mm-hmm. and I used some of those. But basically, I stayed with the Bach mouthpieces, went to the Warburton back bores. Mm-hmm. And for the piccolo, when they came out with that extra weight we had a sectional, and I asked the assistant to stay, and I said, "Tell me what you hear here." So I played it without the weight, and then I played it with the weight. The other two gentlemen were going up the stairs, and they turned around and came back down. "What did you do?" Is this just this weight here? And I think it takes away some of the real shrillness and adds some body. And it was enough that they turned around and had to ask what that was. So
hey, go with the results. That's the way to do it.
So that's what I still use, because I don't really need to buy a new horn unless mine's stolen.
Yep.
I don't need to do anything. I just play with this little church group.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for that, because it's funny. I work at a mouthpiece shop, and I always forget to ask that question. I get all these angry emails. What equipment do they use? What equipment do they use? So,
well, if I was still in the production line, so to speak, having to produce performances and concerts, I would still be trying everybody's mouthpiece.
Yeah,
but I have probably 50 or 60 if anybody wants me to ship them to them.
Hey, but send me a list. I might be interested. Well, it's an absolute honor having you on, Susan. So, folks, I said we'll have the links to the IWBC conference. In any other projects you're working on? Are you enjoying retirement, like you said, and playing a little bit here and there?
Well, the way that we fund the concerts is we have a concert I produce here, and there's Ginger Turner produces one in Baltimore called Holiday Brass Concerts. We started in 1992. So we started with one concert, obviously, and we've grown to 4 concerts. And this will be my 34th year to raise money that way for the IWBC.
Wonderful. So we'll make sure I'll get the links and the information on those, and we'll make sure we have all of that information down in the description and the show notes and everything, so folks can find out about it. Okay.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you, John.
Appreciate it. I mean, like I said, it's an absolute honor to have you on. Sorry, it's taken so long. We talked to you last year at IWBC, and so glad. Better late than never. And before I let you go, the last question: if you could leave our listeners with your best piece of advice, what would that be?
I think that it just falls all the way back to respect. And the bottom line, I know it's a scripture, but love your neighbor as you love yourself. The key here is that you have to truly love yourself, accept yourself, whatever that means for you. Until you can get to that level of accepting yourself, it's a little hard to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So don't be afraid to delve in and examine who you are, because who you are is important. And once you can come to grips with that, that opens the whole door to be loving to your neighbor.
We all need to hear that. Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate your time today. And
Thank you, John.
And I'm gonna hold you to that. You're gonna come watch the table at next month at IWBC.
I will. I keep my word.
Sell a lot of mouthpieces for me.
Well, maybe I could try some.
Yeah, we'll do that too. Thank you. Well, a huge thank you to Susan for being on the podcast. And for those of you watching on YouTube, what a beautiful scenery she had behind her, much better than my my practice room up front at the shop. But what an amazing story. And talking to Susan, it's hard not to overlook the fact that the adversity that she had to push through and persevere through, the stories are just both inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time. Inspiring the fact that nothing could get in her way. No one could say no to her progressing. She just did what she did the best she could and forged a career that no one before her did, really. And which we'll talk to Marie Speziali, who was also around the same time doing a similar thing for a different orchestra. But heartbreaking in the stories of the musical director saying no women could play under my baton, or what did she say? 30-something applications when she was in school to different orchestras and 3 responses. And then when she took her name off and just went by initials, then she got accepted, got 30 responses out of 30. Things like that. I mean, it's the writing's on the wall, what was actually happening there. And while I'd like to think that we've come quite a long ways from the 60s, when Susan was coming up, in some respects, we still have a long way to go. In many respects, that's what I meant to say with the stories that, are being told. So, Susan, thank you for what you do. Really, it was an honor to chat with you. It was great to see. I met Susan for the first time at IWBC last year in Mito, Japan, where we first connected. It was great to finally get her on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing her and maybe you at IWBC coming up here in a few weeks. As I mentioned, we have, speaking of groundbreaking trumpet players in our field, as I mentioned, Marie Speziali is coming up. She was the first woman trumpet player to play in a major symphony orchestra. And that's defined, we talk about that in her episode, but, major meaning a certain budget is how the American Society of Orchestras determines what's major and minor. But certainly the first in the major symphony orchestra, and very similar stories to Susan. Coming up later this summer, we have Liesl Whitaker. She was the first female trumpet player in a major military band. She played with the Army Blues and then also the Army Jazz Ambassadors, a lead trumpet. Some amazing stories from her as well. Also in the fold here is Eric Baker. I've mentioned he's known as the Trumpets Mic'd Up on social media. EB Trumpet stands for both E-flat and Eric Baker Trumpet on the TikTok, Instagram, all of those things. He posts great content, hysterical content, and is also a fabulous player in the West Texas Symphony in his own right and educator. He's in the fold. And also coming up, we're doing another panel discussion with former students of William Adam. Dr. Carl Sievers, Charlie Davis, Bob Slack, Bobby Burns, Gino Munoz. We'll see who else shows up. Maybe there'll be some surprise guests. But that'll be a panel discussion on the podcast and also on YouTube that we'll post probably end of May, early June. So a lot to look forward to, a lot of reasons to hit that subscribe button, a lot of reasons to hit that 5-star review button. And as always, I am eternally grateful for you, the listener. We wouldn't have a show, we wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for your support, both by listening and also, of course, by coming into the shop and, dabbling in mouthpieces or valve alignments or guard bags or Van Laar or Shire's trumpets. All the fun stuff we do here at the shop. That's it for now. Until next time, let's go out and make some music.